Hello there, and welcome to a new video for Age of Wonders 4. This one is a unit guide for the Feudal faction. I'm going to go over this roster, analyze the units, go over their strengths and weaknesses, options you got, and at the end of the video I'm going to summarize the military presence of this culture and give you hopefully a little bit of food for thought to give you ideas for your builds and how you can get the most out of this roster. So there's timestamps down below, so if you're looking for something in particular, go knock yourself out. Let's get started with the first unit, and that's the Scout. So usually they come on horses, don't mind the spider here. I'm going to talk about the spider later, but first let's go over the stats here. So the Feudal Scout is extremely generic. Their low maintenance trait is literally the only thing that separates them from other scouts, and therefore they are an easily spammable unit, but beyond that they don't have much to offer on their own. But their cheapness is making them an interesting choice. For example, here, like the spiders, this makes them even usable for military formations more often. They're cheap, they're available, and with extra skills they become more and more potent for the early game. And they got stand together, so if they are next to another feudal unit, their attack here gets 20% more damage, and that makes them a tad bit stronger than the regular scout. So all in all, well, these are solid scouts, but there's not much going on about them, so use them as a spammable source of intel, and if you synergize them smartly with some cavalry traits, you can pull off some interesting things. Wolves go well as a point-blank defense AoE for the backline, or unicorns even to have that blinking dude that's just going to finish off somebody, I guess. I don't know. They are mostly interesting for their availability to be flooded over the map, I guess. But military-wise, I felt like their low maintenance gives you some incentive to use them in your formations. Maybe, but mostly good available scouting units. The Tier 1 Archer goes into a similar venue. They are extremely vanilla, so to say. There is literally no skill on these guys that is available for, and that isn't available for any other archer, but due to stand together, again, we got a higher base profile of damage than other units got. They have, as long as they are next to another feudal unit, actually the base damage of a tier 2 archer, not a tier 1 archer, and that is somewhat, an excuse for their blandness, because they got a pretty high base damage. This is an interesting thing that is easy to overlook, but beyond that, there's really not much going on for these guys. I cannot really say anything else, so let's go on to the tier 1 Spearmen. So this is a unit that I love to talk about more. So they really look like trash in the first place, and in some way they are, but at the same time they aren't. They are a really good tier 1 unit, out of several reasons. First off, they are cheaper to produce than any tier 1 unit in the game. They are the cheapest in terms of gold, and in terms of draft, there is no cheaper tier 1 unit available for any other roster. Being polearm units, they are really good at retaliating and taking down cavalry and large targets. That means they are really good for swarming down early game targets. A lot of big monsters are large units in cavalry, therefore in the very early stages of the game you can literally zerg down your enemies with that, because these guys have, again, a pretty high baseline damage profile due to stand together. Again, they have more damage than the regular tier 1 unit. And we don't stop here. The feudal training trait gives them more XP per battle, and if they survive long enough, these guys turn into defenders. Defenders are your tier 2 shield units, so they even end their career as a tier 2 unit. So these guys are the perfect spam unit. They are really well off in the front row because either they explode for a decent amount of retaliation damage. As a polearm unit, they are really good at that. Or they will survive long enough and give you a free tier 2 unit. Either way, these guys are amazing and they should be spammed. And they are enough reason to almost try to avoid building any defenders as long as you can make these guys survive. You literally won't have to recruit many of these guys for your armies, so they even save you money. So yeah, an amazing unit, and it's easy to overlook the potency of these guys. So if you need an expendable unit, take the peasant pikeman and just print another when he goes down, and cheer for those that which survive. They really go well with unit enchantments as well, but that's something that's true for the entire roster here. So let's get on over to the defender. We talked about the predecessor of him, so let's talk about the evolved spear unit. They toss away their pike and pick up some real gear, and as a tier 2 unit, they have decent base stats. They also come with a heavy shield trait that's unique to them, so they got a really decent base defense value here. That means they are really good frontliners. They also are capable of spreading defense as a shield unit to their allies, so they are sort of a supporter as well if it comes down to support against physical damage. And again, they come with a stand together trait, and they don't have any other abilities. These guys are the most bland units that I've found, and the feudal roster has some bland frames already. But the cool part about these guys is they come with a really nice physical defense in the baseline. They come with a okay damage profile, and if you put a few enchantments on these guys, they are just annoying because you need to get past them somehow, because they deal some good damage. You have enough of these to put them between the enemy, and all in all, they are, again, very, very powerful, expendable units. And yeah, with some enchantments, they go really, really big. And stand together, combined with a high morale, offers some really nice potential for crits. And that's where things get more and more interesting, and the damage profile of these guys is suddenly quite high, even if they don't have any special traits. And that's the power of these guys. They're basically for free, high physical resolve, and they can even buff your formation against physical damage, but they don't offer that much more. They need some support, they need some spicing to be really, really interesting. So, talking about spicing, let's get on over to the tier 2 supporter, Bannerman, the legendary Bannerman. This is the tier 2 unit of the feudal faction, in my humble opinion, because it adds in so much needed goodness. So first of all, we have a ranged attack that's just lowering the defenses, adding more damage for the allies. So this is a sort of a inverse supporting way by debuffing the enemy. But here we got some powerful point-blank AoEs, point-blank AoE support skills. So we can increase the defenses, and we can heal and increase the crit chance. This is amazing. It also sort of counters Morale Destroyer builds a little bit, but 20 HP point-blank around this guy. This is so much. This is 1/3 of the entire HP of your tier 1 spear guys. This is 40% of the HP of your archers. This means your wounded units, as long as they have a bannerman around them, can go for a combat even if your army is at 50% HP. Don't care if you have bannermen, you can buff them up and they are literally good as new. This is a really, really powerful thing to go for. And another thing that's worth mentioning is the warding defense mode of these guys. This is covering up a really big weakness of the feudal roster, and that's magical resistance. This is something they are not good at. Most of your feudal units don't have a high resistance. You are really excelling at physical resistance, but your magical resistance is rather meh. These guys can even fix this problem. So the Bannerman is the centerpiece of each of your units, and he can fill in any job. Nobody's wounded, but boost up these defenses, and afterwards increase the crit chances. If you have a high damage profile of magic damage, put these guys in between to get rid of any to increase that resistance. There are so many ways to use these guys. You should really include them in your units. At least one of these guys should be in every unit, and you can't do so much with them. Okay, last unit in the roster, the Knight. So your heavy cavalry shock unit. It's amazing that you got these guys. They are really good because they even smack polearm units, because they remove charge resistance. That means if they go into a cavalry unit, they don't get a retaliation attack into their faces. Apart from that, they are your line breakers and your backline access units. They come with a really high movement point availability, and they are also inspiring killers, increasing the morale of all your troops even heavier than other units if they kill somebody. This makes them ideal for killing stuff in the back line. And since they got a lot of movement points, you have an easy way of pathing them around on the battlefield to get into position. You can combine them here again, like I did, with interesting mount options. The spiders weren't the best choice, actually. I felt like I would have been way happier with unicorns, because with unicorns, these guys can blink over the enemy front line and get into the enemy back line even much easier. So these dudes are really, really amazing when you start enchanting them, and these guys are also your highest damage unit. So their biggest weakness, being cavalry, are polearm units, and therefore that's the only thing you should be really worried about. But beyond that, stand together, they also are amazing with wolf mounts, because you would have the pack bonus from wolf mounts, 20% more damage, plus stand together, plus eventually pretty high chance to crit. These guys are really, really high damage dealers and should be the centerpiece of your burst damage. These guys are able to take down the priority targets quite well. Even better if you have access to some special mounts. Really pays off to take that into consideration, because this makes this unit shine even more. The more enchantments they got, the worse this gets. So, this was the roster for the feudals. Let's talk a little bit about their role in the military way in general. These guys are swarmers. You really should end up with a high amount of troops at the end of the day, because it's easy to support them, and and they are quite cheap, and the faction also is featuring a good income in general. It's really important that you note, though, they have a lot of bland frames. They have a lot of units that really need support to get going. But due to the fact that they are really good at supporting high levels of morale, they also come with even a racial spell that buffs that. They have a innate high crit chance. This makes all the spells that increase damage go a little bit more potent on these guys. Therefore, you can amazingly buff up their damage with external sources. They don't even need any other faction's help or anything. All they need is some extra damage, because all the defensive things that you need are integrated into your kit. With the bannermen and the defenders, you can buff up your troops against pretty much any damage that comes up your way, and that leaves you open to go for any sort of destructive idea that you got for them, which makes them really a very flexible and interesting roster, which every attempt on this faction played out very differently for me, even though the units were very, very the same. But yeah, they go really well with unit enchantments. That's the summary that I found there. Unit enchantments and crits are their trademark. So I hope you found that helpful. Let me know in the comment section what you think I missed or what you want to say. I always love to hear from you guys. Feel free to leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Consider subscribing. I'd be delighted if you did so. There's also a playlist link down there. I did a lot of other info videos for Age of Wonders 4, so knock yourself out with that link if you want to watch more of these. Also, again, a big thanks to the supporters of my channel. I deeply appreciate what you do and what you make possible. And if you want to find out more about that, there's Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee as ways and means to check out what I'm talking about. And if not, I thank you for watching this video up to this very point. That already means a lot to me, helps a lot, and is really appreciated. Have a wonderful day, and see you next time.